Well, today we begin the penultimate chapter of A Glastonbury Romance. Can't believe we're almost there. This is chapter... I don't know what chapter number it is. Oh, I'll tell you. You want to know? You have to go in the front for that. This is Volume 2, Chapter 29. The Iron Bar. And we begin it presently. The Iron Bar. It was now the end of February. The newspapers all over England had contained startling headlines for the last week about the Glastonbury commune, most of them calling upon the government to put a stop, by some drastic action, to the scandalous interference with the rights of private property. Nothing, however, was done except what was done by Philip Crowe to protect the building of his new cement road leading down from Wookey Hole and his new steel bridge over the Brew on the south side of Lake Village Field. And Philip's actions was confined to the introduction of police protection. My glasses are getting fogged up. You know what? I don't need them for this. Maybe. There had been so many disputes that year all over the country. Let me start that again. There have been so many disputes that year all over the country between town councils and local landowners that it was difficult for Philip to make the authorities realize that this sudden transforming of Glastonbury into one single cooperative polity was anything more than what their chief of the Taunton police called another of them skylarking council tricks. The government probably would have interfered all the same, for unemployment in all the big neighboring towns, such as Bristol and Cardiff, was acute just then, and there was a dangerous restlessness throughout the country. If it had not been that the really important fortress of private property, namely the Glastonbury Bank, remained untouched by this socialistic experiment. On the 23rd of February, Mr. Evans came down to his shop in the High Street in exceptionally good spirits. The day was one of unusually delicate atmospheric effects. Grey upon grey abounded, with occasional fragments of what looked almost like mother of pearl at the ditch mists were blown here and there over walled courts and mossy lawns while the sun struggled with the clouds. "I have got an exciting bit of news for you when you come back, Owen," Cordelia had said to him at the door of their little house as he set off. "But I'll keep it for tea. Only be sure and don't be later than 5, will you?" No, I'll be back by 5. Si fractus instabil orbis. Si fractus in levitor orbis. Now, what does that mean? If something... I don't know. "I'll be back, Cordy, I swear it," he had replied. As he hurried down the long, sloping road, flanked by workmen's houses, the black tails of his tight-waisted overcoat flapping like the feathers of an excited jackdaw heading against the wind, he wondered to himself what Cordy's news was. Something to do with her father, he thought to himself. Perhaps he's found he's richer than he supposed after counting up his expenses. When he got to the town, he met Finn Toller slouching into Dickory Cantle's tavern. Several encounters of late had Mr. Evans had with Codfin since a certain momentous meeting, a few days after the sheepfold incident, when he had actually challenged the man about his singular encounter with Mandibet. Codfin, from the start, had detected, with that extraordinary clairvoyance which imbeciles share with children, But Mr. Evans had a morbid interest in physical violence, not even excluding murder. He felt, too, that he was absolutely free from any danger that the curiosity man, as he called him to his colleagues, would ever betray him to the authorities. "He be a funny one, he's one's self," he would say to his friends in the taproom of Cantle's, where all the poorest and shabbiest of Glastonbury's derelicts were wont to gather. "I be going to do it tonight, mister," Codfin whispered to him now, with his hand on the tavern door handle. The blinds of the place were down. By the law of England it was closed. By the connivance of the mayor of Glastonbury, people could enter and be served all the morning from the best cellar in Wessex. "I can't hear you, man. I'm deaf this morning. Deaf as an iron bar." Oh, the name of the chapter, the iron bar, said Mr. Evans, giving him a look like that of a malevolent executioner. "If you do anything really, I'll come and stop it. You understand that, I suppose?" "I'll come, wherever you are, for I can always find you, and put a stop to it." He spoke in a threatening tone, and laid his hand with a vicious grip upon Fintoller's left arm just above the elbow. Codfin, whose right hand was still on the handle of the taproom, showed not the slightest sign of nervousness. "Tonight will be the time, mister, then," he said slowly, "for thee to come and put a stop to it. And I'll be here all morning, so if thee wants to come and hear where thee'd be best come to stop it. And maybe here, too, when thee'd be best come to stop it. There's nothing like being in the know, pard. For them a fellow can please his own self. If so be as thee does drop in here the morning over, maybe they'll have a sip of beer with I, to christen this pretty day, afore thee comes uphill to see what must be stopped." The man's straw-colored beard wagged as he spoke, and his pale eyes swam with an unholy amusement. Every word he uttered seemed to carry a double meaning, seemed loaded with hints that his leering eyes completed and confirmed. His weak and subhuman intelligence seemed to wriggle into the interstices of Mr. Evans's wickedest and secretest thoughts, and snuggle and nuzzle and nestle there, as if Mr. Evans's thoughts were the nipples of the many-breasted Diana of the Ephesians. Just like that. Exactly like that. This encounter between the two men was indeed the culmination of several furtive meetings, in all of which there had been, below the surfaces of what audibly passed between them, a wordless conspiracy of understanding, mounting higher and higher, just as if their under-consciousness, the warm snakes within them, had learned the art of an obscure intertwining, an obscene intertwining. Codfin had quickly discovered that his own homicidal instinct, in which the mental image of the iron bar played so lively a part, was responded to by something darker and far more evil, as it was far less simple, in Mr. Evans's nature. Once he had touched the fringe of the dark knowledge, the tramp was led on, for all his imbecility, to play most subtly upon the obscure chord, recognizing that the accident of the sheepfold had helped him to acquire a definite power over this queer curiosity gent who took such an interest in talking to him. A potential murderer, going about among supposedly normal people, acts as a preambling magnet, drawing to himself a cloud of curious tokens, such as one's recklessness in regard to the upshot, the police, the jail, the judge, the gibbet. Endows him with the same sort of power over less desperate minds that an alpine guide, immune to dizziness, acquires over the would-be summit climbers whose faltering steps he supports with his rope. Cotfin had already tasted, in his crafty, imbecile manner, the sharp, delicious Arctic breath of unexpected power in his talk with Red Robinson in Mrs. Chinook's parlor. Robinson, however, had escaped him completely, thereby indicating that emotional hate, as an urge to crime, cannot compete with the warm snake of the sexual nerve. "Well, I've got to get on now," said Mr. Evans. "Good day to ye, Tollar. You mustn't carry out joking too far." "Joking?" thought the tramp as he went in. "That's just the way you would talk, my fine gent." He sighed heavily as he shambled up to the bar counter behind which young Elfin was standing. "If you've heard Mad Bet tell I last night what she'd do to I if I didn't kill her beau quick, you wouldn't talk about joking." Or bow. Right, it's bow. I always pronounce that beau. Boo. As soon as Mr. Evans turned the corner by the cattle market, he saw before him, about 300 yards away, the familiar figure of Miss Elizabeth Crow, seated on a wooden bench just outside a seldom-used candle-pen. Over the empty enclosures behind her, where the animals formerly were tethered, over the wooden posts and the asphalt paving, over bits of stray nondescript paper blown in there between the iron railings of the bench where she was sitting, the flickering misty sunlight fell with the same caressing benediction as it would have carried had it fallen upon the dancing waves of Weymouth Bay or upon the mossy stones of Mark Court. Miss Crow was holding a closed umbrella in her hand, with the ferrule of which she was scrawling vague, meaningless marks in the trodden mud of her feet. She was pondering upon an interview she had had that morning, as soon as his clinic opened, with Dr. Fell, and wondering why it was that doctors never come right out with what they know of their patient's case. Why didn't he say in plain words, she thought, "Your heart is dangerously affected. Those symptoms you have are an indelible sign that you might go off at any minute. The best thing you can do will be to go to bed as soon as you get home and stay there." She had indeed known herself for the last 3 months that her heart was getting worse, and this morning's interview, though Fell had been so cautious, was the convincing blow. She had read the good man's conclusions, shrewd old woman as she was, like a book. And if he had said to her, "You've only 3 weeks more to live," she could not have received her sentence more definitely than she did from his evasive humming and hawing. The chief effect upon Elizabeth's mind was to render her enjoyment of the air and the wind of the day more vivid and intense than she could have believed possible. It was as if this verdict condemning her to death had taken away a thin screen between herself and life. There was a little leafless poplar tree not far from the bench, and the bark rubbed off the northern side, the side facing the candle pins, and some dried dog's excrement following its roots on the side facing the street. In the bare branches of this tree chattered and wrangled 6 sparrows, and upon its trunk, out of reach of cattle or dogs, some tall wastrel had cut with a knife the initials of himself and his girl. The way the broken misty light fell upon this little tree gave it that special quality of magic that familiar objects often receive, whether there were any human eye to see it or not, under certain effects of the atmosphere. Elizabeth Crow's feelings were ebbing and flowing just then between a faint, cold, shuddering recoil from the shock of death, It was when she felt that recoil that she made those meaningless marks in the mud with her umbrella. And an intense, lingering, melting, weeping delight in the smallest familiar earth objects. It was the sight of this poplar tree with its rubbed and disfigured bark, and with certain enchanting and almost mystical shadows on some of its branches as they wavered in the light breeze, which transported her then and thrilled her through and through with a tearful rapture at being still alive. Well, we are all still alive, I hope. So until next time, let's try and keep being alive. This Glastonbury romance is sponsored by Dream Machine. Family Entertainment Center. Dream Machine. Till next time, from Dream Machine and I, cheers from Glastonbury. Goodbye.